I'm just going to talk a few minutes about my first week or so of use with the 15 and how I feel about it compared to the 12. So I love the 12, and I've also used the G11, G10, G9, and G7, and even the G2 I started out photography with in 2002. So I've used a lot of the Gs and most of the modern ones, and I liked them all. They've all been quite nice. They're nice to handle. I like the size and the form factor. So the G12 had a swivel screen, and it was a 460,000 dot. The G15, similar to the G9, had the fixed screen, but it is a 922,000 dot resolution. So the resolution is a big improvement there. Another thing is that the G15 is quite a bit thinner. It's 17% thinner over the G12, which is quite good for handling and storing it. I quite like the way the 15 feels in your hand. They made a ton of little tiny improvements, like the shutter button is a little bit bigger and wider on the 15. They moved some of the dials around. The flash is a pop-up. The ISO dial that was on the 12, they moved that to just a button here. The exposure lock button that was here in the top corner on the 12 is moved down to here, and they put a record button here. So that's a good feature, because a standalone record button is nice, but for the first few days I was hitting the record button by accident when I was trying to lock the exposure. So I have a bunch of little videos that are like 2 seconds long of me just being irritated with that, but that's a little thing. The dials and buttons are more flush and more flat on the 15, and the G12 and G11 buttons and dials were kind of raised up a little bit more. Viewfinder is, as far as I can tell, very similar, almost the same. It's only 80% coverage, so it's not great, but it is better than not having an optical viewfinder at all. A lot of cameras that are around this size don't have one at all. In fact, the Nikon 7700 Coolpix is a similar size, but it doesn't have one. So the viewfinder is quite good. You do get a hot shoe, so you can put flashes and some extra stuff if you want on there. You do get the exposure compensation dial, which is the most important thing. It has a really good feel to it, a lot of good resistance, and it feels really solid. Build quality overall is really solid on both of them. The G12 was like a tank, and the G15 feels about the same way. The finish is a little bit different. The 12 had a more smooth finish on it. The 15 has a little bit of a sort of textured finish on it, and some people have said that it actually scratches a little bit easy, but I haven't found that to be the case so far. They both have the front dial for doing some adjustments, which is quite good, and the G12 one was a little bit different because it had a bit of the body raised up on the top and bottom of it. This one is a little bit lower profile, and it doesn't have the bit of body, so it's just the dial sticking out and nothing else. One thing that I found was kind of a sort of a weird thing on the G12 I had, was that this ring would actually get loose and come off, and that's why it's you can see it's got some scratches and dings on it, because it would actually come off and fall off because it wasn't a very good fit. So half the time I would just take it right off and just leave it off so that it wouldn't fall off. So I think that that was sort of a defective model, probably specific models, probably not all of them. But the ring on the G15 so far has been totally fine, hasn't fallen off at all. The lens is an f1.8 to f2.8, which is quite good for more shallow depth of field and stuff like that. Overall responsiveness is very good. The 15 has a little bit snappier, quicker feel when you're just general operation, viewing photos and navigating menus and stuff. The G15 certainly wasn't slow, but you do see a little bit of an improvement with the 15. The 720p video, this had a 720p video, and it was very bad at focusing on different stuff that was different distances, if you were especially close-up stuff. And the same with the S100 is the same way. It's not really that good, but I don't know if this actually even focused on the go at all. I think it might not have. But this is a 1080p video here on the 15, and it's 24 frames per second like the S100 and S110. But I imagine, I haven't used it yet, but I suspect the focus is going to be better, at least some improvement. And you can zoom in when you're taking video on the 15. The little pad here is more spongy, and it's a bigger pad compared to the 12's pad. It's raised up more on the 15, and so that's nice, and it feels very spongy and very good. The straps on the 12 was not very nice. It was kind of a cheap feeling strap. It wasn't very thick. On the 15 they have actually improved the strap quite a lot, which sounds like a little thing, but it's actually quite a substantial thing because you're using the strap a lot. The cotton weave is a lot thicker, and on this side it's a rubberized material, so it feels really nice, and the actual PowerShot and Canon logos are stitched in as opposed to just sort of printed on. So that was a nice improvement that I appreciated quite a bit, because I like little things, and it's not even that little because the strap is something that you have around your neck constantly, or quite a bit of the time anyway, and so it's nice to have a good strap on it. They both have the RAW mode. You can shoot RAWs and JPEGs at the same time, or one or the other. On the G12, the lens has a little bit of chrome around the edge here. On the G15 the trim is black, which I appreciate because that's quite subtle. The 15 has a dual axis level, so the 12 had a level, but it was horizontal only. As you can see here, when you tip it up and down, there's actually a vertical level as well. And so that's a nice little feature. And it still has all the good information, shooting information, grid, histogram. One of the Canon features that I like is when it flashes the blown out highlights. The other couple cameras I used had the histogram, but it didn't highlight the overexposed stuff.